Thank you. Tell me when.
You are live.
All right. Well, I'd like to start the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for April 30th, 2020. And first, I'd like to ask Cindy to do the roll call.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bont,
Here.
Bauk,
Here.
Kowaziak,
Here.
Ludlow,
Here.
Rixey. No Rixey. Velocity, I know she's not coming. And Zerfus.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Okay. All right. All right, this is Bob Kabashik. I would like to ask Cindy to, or I'd like to ask the zoning board if anyone has any agenda changes at this time. Are there anything that anyone would like to add or make corrections of tonight's agenda?
This is Richard Bont, and I make a motion that we accept the agenda as such.
Do I have a second?
Second. Jim Bauk, I'll second.
All right, about seconds. And then Cindy, you have to do a roll call, I think, for that even, right?
Yep, I do. Bont,
Okay.
Here.
Bauk,
Yes.
Kowaziak,
Yes?
Ludlow,
Yes.
Zerfus.
Yes.
Motion carries. And next would be the approval of the minutes.
All right, thank you. That moves us on to item 3 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from the December 17th, 2019 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. And which I hope most of all of you have had a chance to review. I don't know, does anybody have any questions or corrections to the minutes from December 17th? If there are no suggestions or corrections, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes of December 17th meeting.
This is Jim Bauk. I make a motion that the minutes from the December 17th meeting be approved as written.
Okay, a second?
This is Zach. I second.
All right, Zach, thank you for seconding. I'll ask Cindy for a roll call on approval of the minutes of the
Bont?
past meeting.
Bont,
Cindy, I don't think since I was here in December that I'm able to vote yes or no.
okay. Bauk,
Yes.
Kowaziak,
Yes.
Ludlow,
I was not here in December, Cindy.
okay. Zerfus,
I was also absent at that meeting.
Actually, we only had 3, so.
okay, so we can table this, I guess.
Yeah,
Yes,
Velocity
two of-
about Kabashi.
Two of the 3 who were at that meeting have approved it, Cindy, if that matters.
2 of the 3? I think that does matter. So it's a majority of the people present.
Actually, Cindy, if you want, I can give you a little info on this because we've had this same issue pop up at city council meeting. Actually, we talked to the city attorney about it. Even if you weren't at the meeting, what you're doing when you approve the minutes, you're just approving that those minutes, minutes are accurate to the best of your knowledge. So even if you weren't there, the city attorney says the action you're taking is just approving those minutes. You don't have to be present to approve the minutes. You just, unless you know that there's something wrong in there, like the date was wrong and you said it was December 12th and not the 17th, you would make that change. But otherwise, even if you weren't there, you approve them unless you see something that you think is wrong. So you could do either way, but that's we had our city attorney way in that because we had the same issue pop up at a city council meeting recently.
Kirk, this
So
is
I'll
Richard
take-
Bont. Under those circumstances, I would say yes, I approve the minutes.
Okay, and Ludlow,
I would approve as well.
Zerfus,
Yes, approve.
motion carries. And we'll move on to the next item, which is election of officers.
All right, okay, under new business, we have election of officers. to carry over into this year. At this point in time, I would like to open it up for discussion for any suggestions or nominations or changes we want to make to our current status. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments on that?
This is Richard Bond. I make a motion that we accept Bob Kabasiak as the chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals for Saugatuck.
This is John Ludlow. I'll second that.
All right. Cindy, can we also, in this case, move along on the vice chair and then make a one roll call?
We can
Or
do that.
should we do it individually?
We can do it all at one time.
Richard Bond, Bob, are you accepting that?
I will accept that nomination. And I'll continue to, I would like to also continue with making a suggestion and a motion that we continue with vice chair as Richard Bond.
I'll second that. This is Bauk.
Okay, so we have a
I would accept-
nomination.
This is
Kabashi.
Richard Bond. I would accept that.
You do or don't?
I would accept it.
Okay, sorry, Dick. Okay, so we have nomination for chairman Bob Kabashik, and we have for vice chair Dick Bont. And if you would like to do a election or a roll call on that, we will vote.
Very good. Zerfus,
Yes.
Ludlow,
Yes.
Kubasiak. I'm trying, Bob.
Just call me Bob.
Okay.
Bob, yes.
Bauk,
Yes.
Bont.
Yes.
Motion carries. We have our chairman will be Mr. Kubasiak and our vice chair will be Mr. Bonds.
Okay, all right. So we go into under new business, item B, we have requested height variance for the property located at 1034 Holland Street. And at this time, I would like to ask Cindy to give us a review. I believe she has a PowerPoint that you can show on the screen, and a status of the application and any details that you would like to share.
Bob, this is Richard Bond. I think you need to call the hearing to order before she does that.
Okay.
It's the
I guess
public
that's correct.
hearing procedure
Right.
that we need to call that to order first.
Yep. All right,
Open a
well,
public hearing. Yep.
Yep, so we will open the public here. We've started the public hearing for the 1034 Holland Street application, yes. Mhm. Okay, thank you, Dick.
You're welcome.
Yep. So, okay, so summary by the zoning administrator.
Okay. Of the PowerPoint.
We have it visible. I do.
Kirk, can you go to page 3? There we go. There's kind of an overview of the property. The property in question is the house with, you can barely see it in this PowerPoint, but it's the house with a little tiny red square on it. That one. Yep, you got it. If you go to the next page, it's part of the Flint Assessor's Plat. And this has got to be the most bizarre plat that I have ever seen in all my years, as 35 years now of zoning. I don't understand how the state ever could have approved this. It was approved in 1971, and we're looking at lot 5. You can see it has no street frontage. It's connected by an easement. It's also been combined with the Flint Park private lot, which does not have a lot number. I think I did send you email about what the ordinance says about combining properties under common ownership to determine minimum lot size. And Kirk, if you want to go to the next page, it shows the setback, the front yard setback for that property. And the property immediately to the south, the Flint Park, has been combined. On this survey, it's not shown yet, but it has been combined, and you can see it's a 27-foot front yard setback there. 20 is required. Kirk, if you want to go to the next page, please. This is kind of a survey of the existing property showing where everything is located. And on the next page, you will see the setback of the current house to the side property line. At the far point, it's 7.2 feet. And you can see as it gets closer to as you go to the west, the house gets closer to the property line, so it is encroaching into the required setback of the existing house. That house is intended to be demolished. It is in very dangerous condition. It's falling down the slope, and it's being held in place by a big oak tree. So if you go to the next page, Kirk, you can see how much of the property is taken up by the floodplain. All of this land here is floodplain. And while you can build in a floodplain, you have to elevate with fill or stilts, which is not the most desirable way to build a house. But the proposed house will go all the way down to the end of the floodplain. You want to go to the next page, Kirk? This shows how the proposed house will meet all the required setbacks. The front yard setback we saw on that first survey, where it's 27 feet. The two side yards are shown at 7 feet, and the rear property, for the rear setback is 46 foot 3 3/8 inches. Kirk, you want to go to the next page? One of the most confusing parts of a zoning ordinance is how do you measure height? And you first determine the average grade, and then you figure that out, and you measure the height from there to the average roof height. When you get a steep slope, that's kind of tricky. Any questions about that?
Nope, doesn't sound like it.
Okay,
Yeah, I
Next
have a
page.
question, Cindy.
okay.
It talks about to the highest point of a flat roof or to the average between the peak and the eaves on a ridge or a gable. But the bottom paragraph says, in no case shall the overall peak height be greater than 32 feet. Is
When measured from the natural average grade. So it's
Yes.
really important that you establish that average grade before you start measuring stuff.
So
The way I read it, it's just about exactly 32 feet.
Okay.
So,
And then we have some,
Cindy, this is John Ludlow.
yes,
So the grade is essentially the slope of the piece of property, correct?
right. Kirk, if you want to go back to page, if I can find it here. Page 6. That's the topographical survey.
And what is the elevation at the floodplain?
The flood at the elevation is 585.
Thank you.
I know it's kind of hard, tiny to read, but it's 585. And then at the top, over here on the finished floor of the existing house is 612.
I thought I saw 614, but
614, it could be 614. It's I think in the proposed house, it will be 612. I think we have Mr. Zweigheisen on here as well, who's going to explain how he determined the, uh-oh, my internet connection is unstable. He'll explain how he determined the average height. If we could go back to page 11. That's the street side elevation. I guess that's pretty much what I found when I was doing this. I did do some research. I tried to find out how the height was measured for 1010 Holland, which is a very, very similar elevation on the front and on the rear. It's also got a complex roof line and a steep slope. I went through all that file and I did not find any height calculations on how they did the height there. I did find calculations about how they did the lot coverage, but it's one of those places. And if you go to page 20, please, Kirk. This house also has complex roof lines, different heights, different measurements, different grades, and it's the same steep slope. It's 2 houses away from the proposed, and it's really a complicated calculation. But again, I'm going to turn this over now, I think, back to Bob, and he can height.
Okay, did you, Cindy, did you cover the lot coverage on this? Maybe I missed that.
The PowerPoint, Ed? Mr. Z?
Yes,
I did, Mr. Drawings.
What drawing was the lot
I
coverage on? Maybe a,
To do that, the lot coverage, I think it was on a separate thing that I sent you. Let me try to get my paperwork in order.
yeah, I'm trying to find it too right now, and I'm locked into not getting into my computer, so I'm gonna get some paperwork out to see if I can find it there too.
I did it.
I think I've got it.
Okay, if you look on page 9, please, Kirk. There is the lot coverage information. The footprint is 2,256 or 28%.
And Cindy, that's the 614 elevation I was talking about.
Okay. Oh yeah, there it is. You're right.
Okay, 28%. And we required to be in that area?
The maximum coverage allowed is 30%.
Okay.
And Bob, that's because the property includes the Flint Park section shown on the drawings.
Right.
Okay.
And that Flint Park is encumbered by easements for parking, but it does count toward the lot area.
So, and then while we're on it, that particular drawing, as it shows the, let's say the front yard, existing front yard setback
Yes.
on the, let's call it the south, be the southeast corner, there lower right. Originally that shows like a jog in there. Is that something you said has been corrected based on the one plat? In other words, it doesn't show, there shows an area of the existing house closer than 28 feet or 28.8.
Yes, on the previous survey on page 5.
Probably, yes.
Yes. Over here, this setback, these 2 parcels, I don't know if you can see my arrow or not, but lot 5 and Flint Park have been combined into a single parcel.
So that little jog in that corner where it shows like a corner stake is no longer an issue?
No longer an issue.
Okay, that was some clarity I wanted to understand. That has changed. Okay. Got it. Okay, I'm okay with that. Thanks for, is anyone have any other questions based on, at this time, on Cindy's review? I'm sure we can give them back to them later if you do, but at this point in time, any other clarifications you would like with this up?
Yeah, I'd like to see Cindy's review of the height. Is that where we're headed?
I think that, well, I think her one suggestion was that, Ed, is that correct?
Correct.
Let's go through his calculations and then we can, I guess, go, is that okay? We'll do it at that time?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So, at this point in time, what I'd like to do is ask the applicant, in this case, and Ed, give your name, present yourself, and give us the information you would like to present on behalf of the applicant at this time.
Okay, sounds good. This is Ed Zweigheisen. Everybody calls me Ed Z for obvious reasons. I'm with Gen 1 Architectural Group located in the Holland, Zeeland area. And I think I'll back up just a little bit first before I jump into the heights, just to echo the comment that Cindy had made about this site is something she hasn't seen in 30 years. And I will reiterate the same thing. I haven't seen a site like this in probably 25 years for working, for all the nuances and trying to get something to fit in here. So that's a good slide to show. Actually getting the house to fit within the building setback line was the first priority, due to the fact that the existing home right now was not inside of it. So we took the time to make sure we designed the home to fit within the setbacks of the property. So at least we could make that one marker. Then the hard part does come with the slope of the lot along with the floodplain. So again, that heavy dotted line that's on the exterior of that black box, which is the house. The front line, which is closest to the river, which would be the west side, is that floodplain line. So we were able to stack the home up within the floodplain and within the setbacks. But in order to make that happen, and to get just a normal living home, we stacked the home up basically on 4 levels. And that's why we're starting to talk about the height of the home, because the lowest level would be what would be your normal family room, game room, entertainment. The next level up would be the bedroom level. It has a couple of bedrooms on there. The next level up would be a normal first floor, which has the kitchen, living, and dining room along with the garage. And that's where I'll reference the 614 elevation. Right now, the finished home that is there right now is at that 614. I think it's 613.8 for the existing home. So in order to get a garage at that level, we have to keep, that's one of the points that we have to keep in place, would be that 614, so we could drive a car into the home. And then above that would be a master suite. So again, the tricky lot, because we couldn't build any closer to the river without getting on posts, we just started to stack the house up. And I do think we do have floor plans, but we can get into just the height. It's just a normal 9-foot height for each one of the floors. So the lowest level is 9 foot, next one's 9 foot, main level's 9, and the master suite up above is 9 feet, and then with a standard 1'4" structure in between. And that stacks up to the house that we see. So yeah, there was the lowest level. Then I call it the mid level, the bedroom level, which has a couple bedrooms. The next level up is your basic kitchen, dining, living room with an entry and a 2-stall garage. And then the highest level then is a master suite up above. So the one thing that's actually nice about the home was the owners weren't asking for the world. They were just asking for standard areas in a home. So it would basically be a 2-bedroom master suite, living dining room, and then a rec room. It just happens that we can't put it on 2 levels because we run out of space and we have to build it up and down the hill. So then I'll jump into the heights just. So I calculated this, and I'll just be blunt about it, about 4 times because it's tricky. So going through trying to figure out where the house sits in, what we need to do with retaining walls, and that's a beautiful one to start with right there, to try to get the average height. The biggest component for me was constructability also. We have to remember that we don't want to, building-wise, get a building that we have to put on posts or have to do some type of helical piers. So where the floodplain comes in and the bottom of the house is actually the lowest level that we could dig a traditional foundation, a footing and foundation. I call that the heel of the hill, the toe of the hill. So we could actually build up from there. And if you can, and as you can see from the side elevation, that lowest level, it's a little bit blurry there, but it's only about 18 feet. So if you look at the home, we're actually using the 18 to 22 feet closest to the river as all of our living area. And as you go back into the hill, we're actually just filling that up and not using that for space, just due to the fact we want to make sure that the house stays and we don't have any movement on the home. So when you look at it again from the side, you can see the garage level there, but underneath the garage would be fill, which helps out with building on the hillside. And then as you step down, it's the same thing. Every time you progress towards the river, we keep stacking the home up, and that's what we do for constructability. So that front section of the home is an overall of 42.6. That what would be on the river side. And then the driveway entry side, if you look, the lowest point as you're pulling into the garage, it's only 9 feet 10 inches. So when you look at it from the front, it looks not even as tall as a 2-story home, and the back looks very similar to the house just 2 houses away. So the other reason I accomplished that was keeping that highest roof flat instead of having a gabled end. So yeah, you can even see from that photo there, instead of having a gabled roof that would even stick up even higher, I put in a flat roof, which does work because it's more of a modern style home. So I desperately tried to get within the height limits, and that's what you see on the exterior sheets. I did stack up the home and measured all the front, sides, and rear. And when I came to my final height average, all the way around with slopes and retaining walls, I did come up with 28.88888. And your height requirements are 28 average for all the way around. So it's very close, but it's still above what you're asking for. And I'll stop there for the moment.
28, let's call it 28.9 rounded, right, Ed?
Yep, yeah, we can say 29 feet.
28.9.
And
You can move a retaining wall one way or the other and shift all of the calculations.
could you please show us on this drawing, we're looking at the side view, north side, south elevation. Where is that 30 feet measured from and to, or 28.888?
28.888 is the final number. So what you're seeing here are sections of the home. So there's not a single dimension that will be 28 feet. As you can see, there's along the top of that, it says section height at 42.6. Then there's another section height at 32 feet. Then there's another section height of 19 and 13.8 for the south. So what this is averaging, because we have different heights all the way along the home. The only static dimension for this home would be on the lake side. All the other heights vary due to retaining walls and the slope of the grade. So you'll never find a singular dimension that calls out that 28 feet. That's actually the average of the entire home. Does that make sense?
So there is no point that you considered the midpoint or average point of the grade from where you measured up to the flat roof?
I did that along all points of the front, sides, and rear. So you can see each one of my dimensions on there,
I can't
even
read
on
them.
the
It's a little
side
small.
elevation, starting from 910 on the front, then another section at 17.7, another section at 23 feet. So at each point, it's a section of height of the house, and then they're averaged together to get to that 28 or 29 feet.
Well, I see foundations, but I don't see grade.
Grade is the dark, the heaviest line.
The angled one?
The angled one is about what's there now. The ones that jog is what we're going to need for retaining walls. So that heavy line would be the grade line.
So where would be the point of average grade?
It would be stair stepping.
Well, the foundation is,
Correct.
but the grade is that heavy sloped line. Is that correct?
Well, the grade actually changes. As soon as I put a retaining wall in, it actually, the average grade would be flat along the home at that point.
So you are saying there'll be a retaining wall at every one of those points?
That's correct.
Every
Yep.
one of the jogs?
Correct. We need that for construction of the home as well.
Does the
I think that's-
retaining wall extend to the property line?
It will probably curve back. We have a couple of different issues. Now you're opening up the next dilemma here with getting the house in. Not only is this tree being held up by a tree, we also have retaining walls that are tying in from the neighbors on the north and the south. So that's why I said earlier that they could potentially be some slides. So even as I look at this south elevation, the retaining wall that's shown right in the middle may actually have to slide farther towards the west just due to the neighbor's property. So we are going to have some field adjustment in this for the retaining walls to make sure they're matching up with existing as well.
While I can appreciate the value for ceiling heights, what is your response to not having 8-foot high ceiling?
Normal new construction of a home, I guess.
New, the word new?
The word new. The other thing I needed to do was keep the driveway plane. Let me get back to that sheet. That magical 614, and getting a toe into the hillside. So if I do 8 feet, I start losing more depth in the entire home, if that makes sense. So if we do 8 feet, I'm actually pulling this house higher above the floodplain, which then I have to build more up on the bottom, which gives me a deeper footing and foundation. So by stacking up 9 feet, I get even heights and I get closer to the toe of the hillside, if that makes sense. I would actually like to have that lower basement even deeper so I can get into more undisturbed dirt. So it was the balance. If I didn't have to worry about the height, that lower basement level, I would really like to have about 11 feet. So it's actually in the toe of the hillside.
Bob, this is Richard Bond. Question for you, Ed. You mentioned to me that the family was looking for standards for their house. Standards for houses are 8 feet, generally 8 feet. 9 foot's not a general. My question to you is that if in fact each one of these floors was 8 foot 6 inches, not 9 feet, you would not even need a variance from us.
That
So
would be,
that is
would
my
be
thought. I'm just saying, I'm looking at this and saying the normal is not 9, normal is 8 foot, not even for new construction. So I was just looking in general requirements for the state of Michigan, and 8 foot is still the general height range.
and the answer would be yes. If I were to take a foot off of each one of these, you wouldn't see my smiling face tonight.
No, I didn't say a foot off. I asked you to take 6 inches off each level, not a foot, 6 inches off each level. All right, so that would give you 2 feet difference, and therefore you would not even need a height variance from us.
That is correct.
Is that correct, Bob?
Yeah, I think I appreciated his first 9 foot. But
Oh,
I
I
think you could
understand.
get 18 in, or you could get 1.5 feet.
Well, that's if 28.8 is the right number. Because when I'm looking at this drawing, I'm looking at what appears to be a section height of 32 feet, 5 inches or something like that to the flat roof to what appears to be the midpoint of the grade.
Yeah.
And the zoning requirement says under no circumstances shall the peak of the roof be over 32 feet.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I saw too, and that's why I was referring more to take it even, because that's the midpoint, 32 feet of that house.
And that's to a built-up area. If it were to the original grade, it'd be several feet beyond that.
And we're looking for a variance of what, 2 feet?
2 feet.
Well, that's if you agree with the 28.8 number rather than the 30 feet 4 inches, which it looks like on the drawing. That's why I was trying to understand where the 28.8 came from.
Yeah, I was too.
The 28.8 is an average, correct?
Correct. That's an average.
An average of what?
An average of all the faces of the home to what the grade would be after the home is completed.
But are they all measured to the flat roof, or is the back section to the midpoint of the sloped roof, even though that's not the peak?
If I could chime in for just a second. It's all measured from the average grade plane. So you take the average of so it's about 599 is the average grade plane. If you look at the topographical survey,
Yeah.
so you're measuring from the 599 line.
So what would the height of the roof, the flat roof be?
It would be about 28.8.
I'm not seeing that.
I'm not seeing that either.
Okay, Kirk, if you could go to the topographic.
Well, let's stay with this drawing because we're trying to get to how high is the peak of the house, which is that flat roof, because the zoning ordinance says
survey, which
under no circumstances shall the peak be higher than 32 feet.
above the average grade plane. So first you have to establish the average grade plane, which is difficult to do because you have all these retaining walls. And again,
Well, we know that the base of the house is at 585, right?
585,
And the house is, what,
614.
42.6?
Well, we're not measuring from that. That's not the average grade plane.
No, I was gonna take
42.6
off
is not
15
measured
feet.
from the average
I was
grade
gonna
plane.
take off 15 feet. I was trying to figure out what is the elevation of the flat roof, which would be 585 plus 42.6, right?
No, because 585 is not the average grade plane.
I'm trying to
585 is
figure out what the elevation of the flat roof is, and then we can back out 599, which is average, and see what the height from the average to the flat roof is.
I probably think Ed could do a better explanation of that, but the thing is, the average grade plane is basically halfway between the highest point of the grade, which is 612 or 614, and 585.
Cindy, can you say that again?
The average grade plane is about halfway between the grade at the street side and the grade of 585.
And what is it at the street side?
Yeah.
It's 614, I believe.
You had 6
Is that correct?
just a little over 613 for the actual, yeah, 614 to make it easy for math. And again, I did not take that average grade plane. I averaged all of the faces of the building to get to that point.
Which is another way to do the same thing.
Correct.
Right. It strictly is.
So if I use the math the way I did it, which is the base of the house is 585. It's at the floodplain. The roof of the house is what, 42 feet, 6 inches higher than that? Isn't that
No,
the
it's
number on the front?
correct, but
Or is it
that's actually
46?
the 585. The house actually sits 2.5 to 3 feet above that because I'm coming up out of that lowest grade.
So what's the measurement point, Cindy? The top of the foundation?
That's where the grade comes to the top of the foundation. You can see that on that south elevation. You see how it slopes up to the
Yeah.
to cover the foundation. That lowest line that you see far to the left, there's your 585 line. So the house is above that floodplain.
Okay. And how tall is the house from the foundation to the top of the flat roof? I can't
Is
read
that
that
full?
number on the front.
That's at 42.6.
42.6. Okay.
And at that next one up, it's 32 feet.
Correct. And the next one up, it's 23 feet. And the next one is 17. And you get to the front of the house, it's 9'10". So now you're seeing the complexity. We don't have a static dimension or a static average. We have different points all along the home that give you different heights.
That's true, but we also have a standard that says the peak of the house shall not exceed 32 feet.
And that's above the average grade plane, not to any point.
Yeah.
Yes. So do we meet that standard or not?
I believe we do.
I don't think we do. If I look at that, where it says 32 feet on, not the first one, 46, 32 feet would be the average in there. If you look at from the distance from the bottom to the top, to me, that looks like the average. Now, the other question I said to him is that, and not that there's a difference between what is standard and what you want to build. I think that's one of the issues here too, that I think that's something that has to be considered.
Yeah, I will fill in, this is Bob Kabashik, I will fill in that we've had other houses when we've done this, you know, as far as the grade, you can have a grade that can go halfway down the house and be almost level with let's say with the main floor, and then take off, you know, on a bad angle. And that changes your calculations as opposed to, let's say an actual true angle from one point, from the front grade, the 614, all the way down to 585 as a straight average. So sometimes your properties do allow you to gain, let's say, calculation, because it might be flat for quite a while and it drops off quite a bit towards the end. So that I've seen people benefit in overall average heights. But I do believe that the concern we have here is a question of the overall height of the house. That is in our ordinance. Not that we couldn't take a look at that, but that is, I think, the question that the zoning board right now is questioning. And since we're in the situation we're in the public hearing here with the applicant, I think I would suggest as chairman that we do at this point go through any other correspondence that we've had, any other people that might be in favor or against the application. And then in our deliberation, we could get back to this if anybody has any other opinions on that.
Sounds
Okay.
fine.
All right. So what I'd like to do at this point, based on our agenda, and Ed, what we do here is we'll just see if there's any other correspondence to be shared, because at this time, we are open to the comment from the public, and then we will go into our deliberation and question and answers. So I do know we've had a couple of things come in due to the uniqueness of the environment we have. We have had one email here late tonight, I believe it was, Cindy, that was
Yes.
from a neighbor renter, I guess you would say, correct?
We had 3 communications, one from Gary and Jan Kemp. Overall in support, but we're concerned about some of the aesthetics of the siding and concerned about excavation. We had one from Janelle Young, the neighbor to the north, in support of the application, and one from Ellie and Andrew Carruthers, which may be the same as Janelle Young, but they're from 1044 property to the north, and they are in support.
I think those are the same people.
I think they are too, but
Yeah, they're
they're 2 different emails, so.
yes. Yeah, and the Kemps had some concern about scale, you might say, of the neighboring lots. But I think their one concern, and Ed, I know this is a challenge, and I think we're getting pretty much favoritism from neighbors here on the improvements and the good job that you've done doing this. The concerns, of course, is the challenge of the unusual lot and making sure that there's care taken in on neighboring properties, which is nothing we deal with, just something we want to make sure is mentioned in our public hearing that is a concern of the neighbors. So so I would say that from what we've had correspondence for those 2.5, let's call it, have been in favor of the proposal as proposed, with some concerns, and that their biggest concern might be for protecting the neighbors' properties during construction. I don't believe we had anything against any correspondence not supporting it. Is that correct, Cindy?
That's correct, Bob, but I think that we do need to open it up to the public to make comments, and Kirk will help with that.
Okay, yes, that is done by someone tapping in or coming in on Zoom. So I guess at this point in time, we offer that. That is something that you manage, Kirk, through the Zoom, or they just pop up?
Well, if anybody in the, we have a few people that are on, and anyone that wants to make a public comment, just they can unmute themselves. If they are on a cell phone or a phone, they can do *6, and that will unmute them. They just speak up and get the attention of the chairman and make a comment.
Okay. So I will like to ask if there is anyone listening in on the Zoom that would like to come in and make comments at this time.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just say,
This is Gary Kemp.
hi, Gary. Okay.
Hi, Bob. I live at 1022 Holland, which is right behind the cottage at 1026 Holland, and we own both properties. And our concerns, I did a lot of calculating on the height of the house, and I got 32 feet the way I did it, but that's for you guys to figure out, I guess. That's as good as I could get it. But the main thing that we noticed about the house is most of the visibility, or from our perspective, is from the front of the house, the street side, in other words. And I'm not too concerned of that, in that the street side looks like it's going to be basically a two-story house, and Andrew and Ellie's house at 1044 is pretty much a two-story house also. And if we do anything to our cottage at some time in the future, it's hard to imagine that we probably won't end up with probably a two-story cottage there too from the street side. It's pretty hard not to and have any space there. So from a height perspective, we weren't as concerned from the street. From the river, it's a tall house, but the house that's in your packet that's a couple away is pretty much about the same height, I think. It's pretty close to it, but it's way down the hill sort of thing. So our major concerns are, our cottage is about 120 years old, as I indicated in my email, and we're really concerned about digging and putting in those foundations the way he describes, and all of that. That there's no damage to our house and it doesn't want to slide down the hill or whatever. We've never had any problems with it to date. But I am concerned that they give us some kind of a builder's insurance policy with us as co-insurers, or as the primary insurer on it, so that we don't have to worry about that, because there's a lot of construction issues there, I think. And then we're also a little concerned, I guess, about the visuals of the side of the house and the front, because it's such a large expanse of siding and concrete, and it's, I don't know what you do there, but there's a couple of different dimensional patterns proposed on the width of the siding, and the front of the house is pretty plain. At least in the lakefront is pretty plain. And I don't know what you can do exactly to change that, but I think I'd like to see some focus really put on the finishing issues. And we did have conversations with Steve, the owner, about that. He said he was going to, that he and Ed were going to work on the aesthetics further, and I hope that's true. And so that's our other concern. And stylistically, it's very different than the area. That's not something I know that the Zoning Board of Appeals, I guess, is as concerned about. It's more modern. More of the other homes in our area are contemporary. And the only other thing that we talked about was the proportion of the lot and the size of the footprint. The footprint, as I calculate it, is much bigger than the surrounding houses. It's much bigger than Ellie's and Andrew's, and it's much bigger for sure than ours. And it's even much bigger than the original cottage that was there. So that is a concern. I did send a secondary email that tried to summarize the differences there in the footprint. So it sounds like I'm negative about it, but it's going to block a lot of our view, but it's going to certainly I think, improve the area just from the point of view it's going to be an expensive construction, expensive home.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you, your comments, Gary. And at this point in time, I will ask if there's anyone else that would like to enter or speak in for any comments pro or against the application. Nothing? Anybody think?
I'm not seeing anything, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. All right, this is Chairman Bob back. Okay, at this time, I would like to close the portion of the meeting to the public portion and have the zoning board members go into deliberation and discussion as to what it is has been put in front of us and some of our earlier questions. I guess the calculation, I'll give a little review in my mind that the calculation is always a little bit tricky. And you can understand, I can understand where Ed picked his points of a grade that is changing. It's not on the line down, but there's these points where he's picked those grades. And to come up with his calculation there, then I guess one of the biggest questions we're having right here is the overall height, just as a concern based on what the ordinance states. So I guess we probably should go back to that a little bit and the calculation here. We've resolved that there seems to be, I want to say that I think that the architect has done a wonderful job compared to what we run into many times in much easier lots to build upon, and people don't even meet the setbacks. So this is a heck of a big challenge to try to make side yards, rear yards, floodplains, all those things, lot coverage come in. And I do recall the two houses to the south there, when we did that years ago, there was a lot of controversy on the height and the building down the hill. I can't remember it. I know I asked Cindy to look into it a little bit, and she didn't exactly find anything that was 100% reference to the overall height or the grade. But I do recall there was a lot of controversy on that one. So as this narrows down, I think all an attempt goes, there's been an awful lot of attempt to accommodate our ordinances in a given situation that is, we have a lot of unusual areas in our city, and these lots are amongst probably some of the most challenging that we have. So all that said, for me, I would like to open it up to any other of the members' comments. Anybody want to start?
Bob, this is Dick. I have nothing against the applicant building the house at all. It's a tricky design. It's a tricky slope. Not to say anything about that, but the thing is that a standard height is 8 foot. I don't care what he could make, if in fact he made each one of those 8'6" on each level, he would not need a variance from it. That would take care of the 2 feet. It would be under the 32 feet and he would be able to meet it. Now, maybe the architectural design, since I'm not an architect, but I have built many houses. So I'm just thinking of standards of houses and everything else that I see being built every day of the week. So there are people that want a more plush house that have 9 feet, 9, 6, 10 feet. So that's my thought. I hope that we can come to some resolution to allow the applicant to build his house because I think it's has some value to our community.
Okay. Thanks, Dick. How about Mr. Ludlow? John?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I changed my microphone. Okay. So I walked down to this house yesterday, and I don't know if anybody else has walked down to the house, but it's a disaster. And I would be just in 100% favor of taking this old house down and putting something up that's appealing like this. Personally, I mean, I can tell you everything about a virus and how a virus works, but for the life of me, I don't understand how we're calculating the height here. You know, just my simplistic calculation, if I look at the level of the property on the street side, the level of the property on the floodplain, take those two measurements, find out a median height, and take that minus the 42.6, I mean, I come up with about 31 feet. I think we're close, and it seems like this is something, I don't want to split hairs here, but it seems like we can come to a resolution here and get this thing solved. It's just, for me right now, the only stickler is I just don't understand how this height calculation, and I want to make sure that that's done and we do that correctly. So, I would leave it up to smarter people than me, but that's my only issue.
All right. Well, thanks, John. How about if I move on to Zach? Would you like to pitch in?
Yeah, it seems to me a little bit like we're splitting hairs. The way the ordinance is written, the height's actually supposed to be 28 feet, but not to be greater than 32 feet. I guess, like John, I'm a little confused there with how that is determined. Because when you look at the average height, according to the architect's measurements, it actually was 28.88. But at some point in the house, it reaches 32. So, I mean, is the average height actually less than 32? But at some point, it goes to 32.
Good question. Okay.
I mean, it seems like we're so close. It's
Yeah.
so close to not even needing a variance. So, you know, I don't know what the best solution is, but it seems like to me they've made a strong effort to stay within all of the setbacks and also try not to go over the height requirement. But
Okay.
the only thing, Richard also brought up a good point that the they're asking for 9-foot ceilings. My only thought on that was, you know, when you're stacking a house, now every floor is kind of compressed. You know, you don't have big open spaces, although you do have the decks, you do have, you know, the outside spaces that are open. Maybe the 9-foot ceilings are more to open up the plan for aesthetics. That would be my first thought, or only thought on that.
All right, Zach. I appreciate it. Jim Bow?
My first thought is I want to compliment the architect.
Yeah.
Number one, for his work on the house itself, and number two, for the effort that was put into trying to maximize the house while still staying marginally within the requirements. But that's the architect's job, and he's done a very good job of that. I agree with Dick that absolutely, you know, I'm a licensed builder. The standard ceiling height is 8 foot. In this particular house that we're looking at, because it's so narrow and the rooms are small, to have 8-foot ceilings, you'd feel like you were living in a series of stacked up mobile homes, I think. Adding that 9-foot ceiling really helps to open up an otherwise small room. So it creates a feeling of spaciousness in a house that would otherwise be perceived as kind of small and a little tight. From the street, it fits right in with the neighborhood very well. From the river, it's going to be something that really catches your eye, just like that other house that's there now. You look at that and say, whoa, what is that? So the aesthetics, yeah, that. When you're going down the river, you don't see anything but that. So the aesthetics of this are going to be important, but that's not what we rule on. To get to the height of the house, what I think we're left with is the standard, which Cindy has done a nice job of printing out for us, says measured to the highest point of a flat roof. And from any point of view, the flat roof is the highest part of this house. So the average height of the gable roofs, to me, doesn't even come into play. And then the overall rule, which I'm not sure if we have the authority to overrule or not, because it's very specific. In no case shall the overall peak height of the building be greater than 32 feet, which measured from the average natural grade. That's where the average comes in, not on the average of the house, from my reading of the standard.
Okay.
Now, to do my math, to figure it out, what I did was I said that, Kurt, could we go to that side view of the house, please? I said that the floodplain, which would be in front of, to the left of the house and under the deck, is 585 from the topographic map. And the house itself sits 2 feet above that. That's based on our information from the architect. So to measure from the top of the, so that puts the top of the foundation at 587 feet of elevation. The house is 42.6. You add those together to get the height of the roof, that's going to give you about 629.6. If you go to the average grade, which is halfway between 614, which is where the driveway comes in at the top, and 585, Cindy tells us that's 599. So if you back that out, you're left with 30 feet, 0.4 as the height of the building from the average grade. That's how I would calculate it. So it seems to fall within the 32-foot 6 that he shows on the drawing here. We'll say that's slightly downhill from the average grade. If you're looking for where is that 599 number. So by my calculations, this thing falls at 30 feet 4 inches. The overall height of the building would be less than 32. It falls within. So I think we'd be granting a variance of from 28 feet to 30.4, call it 30.6, 2.5 feet. I think we could do that because I don't think it exceeds the 32 feet based on those calculations. I think we've got something that we could defend if we were ever challenged. So I'd probably be in favor of approving this one.
Okay. Well, I think that you all had some very good points. It is a as you know, a lot of our rules are written to be some are pretty clear, some are pretty interpretable, and when you have situations like this where you have to take different points and come up with averages, and there are ways of doing things that maybe lean a little left and sometimes lean a little right, but it seems like that I was going to comment, and all of you really did, that and I was the first to say that the 8-foot height is possible on a couple of those floors, but my opinion is that, you know, if you gain 2 feet, whether you need a 6-inch variance or no variance, you know, the old saying is these higher ceilings, mostly in lofted ceilings, you know, a house lives larger than it is, and it's a huge difference in this floor plan. In that goes. So I think that from what I'm hearing as chairman, that it sounds like I would like to see if there's any more questions that you guys have for Ed, or amongst ourselves, that we couldn't move along. And if there aren't any more questions, that way we could look at our standards and just see how the comments come out of the standards and work through the 4 standards.
Bob, I have a question for Ed.
Okay, Dick?
I go along with Jim. This is I want to compliment you in trying to put something together on such an unusual slope. The question I have for you now, knowing our comments, are there any difference that you would make in your design other than what you have right now?
I'll do a fast no on that, but then I'll talk a little bit more about that, just because this isn't the first time I've been going through this, and not this in general, but this particular lot. So even starting out trying to fit this home on the lot, this is probably the 5th iteration of ideas that's come out, with a couple of them going over the floodplain area, seeing if we could be creative with taking the garage and moving it forward, but then we blew the property line issue. So by the time I got to this iteration, it's been thought through 3, 4, 5, or 6 times. And this was, for me, the best way to try to hit. For me, I'm smiling because I think I hit like 95 to 98% of everything that's required. And it's only just the last couple little issues of how do we get this house in here. So that's where I would say the quick no of would I change anything, just because this has been mulled over for 6 times and over 6 months. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you would not change your elevations or heights for each level?
If I could keep them 9, and we're so close, the way we've been talking, within inches of the entire house actually making it almost without a variance, then yes, I would rather keep it like this, because the owners also like the way this has turned out. Yeah, and for me, it's a beautiful home created just for them. And that's one of the things as far as architecture goes, is designing within the criteria, but then also making your owners happy at the same time. So that's been accomplished.
Okay, I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much, Ed.
Okay, anyone else have any other concerns, questions before we read the standards? All right, then let's do that. In our tradition, remember, we like to, as a reminder, you have to make sure that we understand our opinions of the standards, and comments. All standards need to be met in order to ever make a motion to go in favor of the applicant's request. So I guess we got enough people. Why don't we start with Jim Bout? Can you read number 1 for us, Jim, if you're on that page?
Certainly. That strict compliance with area, setbacks, frontage, height, bulk, or density would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. Strict compliance would allow it to be used for a permitted purpose. You could build a very small home there. But conformity in this case might be unnecessarily burdensome because you'd be building a cottage. You wouldn't be building a year-round home that feels large and lived in. Not necessarily large, but feels comfortable when you're living in it. You would have very small rooms, and that could be considered a burden to the owners of that property, both now and in the future. So I would agree that this would render full conformity a burden in this case because of the shape of that lot.
Okay, and because of our online meeting here, I think I'd like to just consider I'm going around the table here if I can and get any either kind of like a thumbs up or any questions or comments from anybody if you have any. So let's go to Dick Bont next on this.
Bob, I would tend to go along with Jim about listening now and listening to Ed, what he is saying about his client, about burdensome things. And I think that I would tend to go along with what Jim is saying on the number one variant. So.
Okay. All right. And then Zach, anything on your thoughts on this?
I would agree with what Jim said as well. I think that, you know, strict compliance might render conformity unnecessarily burdensome.
Okay. And
I think that strict compliance would be very burdensome.
Yeah. And John?
Yeah, and I would thank Jim Bauk for his explanation and opinions. It really, you know, the knee jerk for me was, hey, take 6 inches off every floor and you'll be good to go. And I think the considerations that Jim brought up were very accurate and timely, and I would agree with him.
Okay. And yeah, I also find that the number one, based on the comments and everything, that it does meet this the intent of the ordinance for number one. So at this point, we all seem to be in favor of that, based on the fact that it you know, is an unusual situation and the amount of conformity that's gone into it. So how about number two? Our John Ledlow, are you able to read that one?
Yeah. A variance would do substantial justice to the owner as well as to the other property owners in the district, or whether a lesser relaxation would give substantial relief and be more consistent with justice to others. Now it's an interesting topic. Having walked down to this house and looked at things, and I walked down the front of the house, the riverside. I mean, this place is a ticking time bomb, it would seem to me. And I think this granting this variance is going to help not only the owner, but the neighbors and the neighborhood and the community as a whole. I'm more concerned about, or would least like to watch the demolition of this house, because I think that's going to be an architectural feat in and of itself. But I think that a variance would be appropriate in this setting.
All right, thanks, John. Zach?
Yeah, I think it meets the standard as well. I think, you know, you're taking a home that's falling apart and putting a new home there. Also, it is currently not meeting some of the setbacks, and the new home will. So I think it meets this standard.
All right. Dick Bont?
Yeah, I have to let my cat get through here a minute first. This zooming thing is something that I apologize. I think the thing here that is so important here, that the variance would do substantial justice to the owner, as I think the thing to me that's so important here is to other property owners in the district. As John Ludlow was saying, not only that, but to that whole community along that side. And if I listen to one of the neighbors make a comment about that if in fact they were to do something, they could see that something like this would have to be done. So doing justice to this owner could in the future help do justice to other property owners along.
All right, thanks, Dick. Jim Bout?
We have heard from neighbors on both sides, and they're in support of this. So I would say that the opinion of the neighbors says that there is no injustice here whatsoever. They're satisfied with what's happening. And so I think this standard has been met.
Okay. All right. I also believe that it's been met. There's no doubt that while I guess the word consistent is in our situation, that it will be more consistent what we're hearing, and that it is a relaxation that would allow this to work. So in the area, based on even any of the comments. So, all right. So let's go on to standard number 3. And Zach, are you able to do this?
Sure. Number 3, that the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to general neighborhood conditions. So, yeah, I think that this whole Flint assessor's plat is pretty unique. And the fact that I think these are new owners that bought a house that was, not livable. So I think that it definitely meets standard 3.
Okay. One a little bit easier ones, especially with the topography and all. Okay. Then I would say Dick Bont, your input.
Oh, I think totally. I mean, it's due to the unique circumstances of the area that the platters have put in back in, I don't remember what year it was, 1970 something. And so I would go along with the applicant to say that he would pass that one.
All right. Jim Bout?
Well, like Cindy, I agree that I can't understand how this was ever divided up the way it was divided up, but that's the deck of cards we got to play.
Yeah.
And I walked over there tonight to see the thing as well, and this house isn't built on a hill, it's built on a cliff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a cliff of sand. So yes, this lot has unique circumstances unto itself. So I believe the standard is fully met.
All right. Thanks, Jim. All right, John?
Yeah, I guess my only comment here is a question for Ed. Ed, when was this, the owners bought this piece of property?
I don't know the actual purchase time. I know it was last fall that I was invited to go to the lot itself, and I honestly did not ask when they purchased it.
Yeah,
So,
I can't think this is something that they've owned for a long, long time.
I checked on the tax records. I think they bought it last July.
Last July, yeah. I'll just second what everybody else has said. I was just, this was a purchase that was with some considerable risk in my mind, and that in and of itself says something. So I'm all in favor of issue 3.
Okay, I will also say yes on issue 3. I know that maybe some of you read one of the correspondence that the new owners have live in Indianapolis, have sold their house and are planning to move here. So it's this is not so much, they did want it to be more of a house as opposed to a part-time situation. So I believe that did just happen and purchased last year. So. Okay, that would make us for night number 4. And who hasn't gone? Do I lose track?
I'll do that, Bob.
Dick, yeah, Dick, you would
That
start.
the problem is not self-created or based on personal finance circumstances. The situation was created by the Platters, not by that owner, and it was not created by themselves. So I would totally agree with number 4.
One of our easier ones, I would say, in this case. Go ahead, Jim Bauk.
I would agree, especially since their architect has gone through 6 iterations. It certainly was not based on personal financial circumstances. So, yes, I think that standard's been met.
Okay, John Ludlow.
Yeah, I just echo what Jim just said. I think that just about says it all. So.
And Zach?
Yeah, I would agree. It meets number 4 standard for sure.
I also agree. It's funny how over the years you do these, and sometimes you can go through all 4 standards. You get down to number 4, and you can say, "Sorry, guys." They all have their unique and different standings of meaning, and once in a while, one of these will catch you at the end. So. Based on my notes and review, at this point in time, the board has reviewed the 4 standards and found that they all agreed with the 4 standards. That moves us on to looking at making a motion for the variance, the height variance, and I guess that goes back to our discussion of whether you make this it sounds like from my notes earlier that it's a 2'6", 30-inch, 2.5 foot variance if you wanted to be detailed. That's what I had. I don't know, Jim Bauk, you were also making some notes on that. So it's not really a 2 foot. We could look at a 3 foot, but it sounds like it's somewhere between there.
My I had a paper calculation here. Says it's 30 feet, 30.4 feet. So if we went 2.5 feet, 28 up to 30 feet 6 inches, I think we'd have this house covered and have them off and running.
I think based on the way we've discussed this calculation and the request, does anybody have any other opinions on that number?
No.
No, I don't either, Bob.
Zach?
I would trust Jim's calculations above mine, that's for sure.
Okay. Well, we got to
get comfortable with that number.
Yes.
Well, it's a tricky calculation, and I would say I agree with what John Ludlow said earlier. If you're dealing with 6 inches or a 12-inch or whatever it might be, I think being able to assist this applicant in meeting all 4 requirements and making a motion to approve their application, I think would be fine.
Well, and I think that as we come out of it, we're actually increasing the request.
Yes,
Correct?
we are.
Yeah. So, you know, and when it all gets down to it, you know, 4 or 5 inches will never be measurable. So, so I guess at that point, all said and all gone through, I would like to ask a member to make a motion based on the dimensions and standards that we've reviewed. And for a second, if there is beyond that, but let's get the motion made and make sure we understand what's being forwarded. So go ahead, anybody.
I'll make a
Bob,
motion.
I'll make a motion to approve application V 20,001 for a new home at 1034 Holland Street with an average height of not more than, in this case, would be 32 feet 6 inches. Is that correct?
Yes.
No, that's not the average height. That's the
Well,
peak.
no,
No,
sorry.
not the average, right, not the average height, right. So it would still be with an average height of not more than 30 feet yet. Upon the calculation that Ed has given us, which would be something, what do you say it was, like 29 point something?
No,
Yeah,
I
it was
said
20.
it-
28.8 at one time, but
Well, I heard some of your numbers thrown out. What would be the actual average height then?
Average height doesn't matter, Dick. It's
the variance.
relative to the average grade. So should we make a motion that we grant a 2-foot 6-inch variance to the standard of 28 feet to allow this house to be built as designed?
Yeah, because you can't use the average height,
No, it's average grade. It's not average. height.
average grade.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes sense because we're really given a 2-foot 6-inch variance.
Yeah.
And it's to the average grade, which is the way it's referenced and calculated. Okay. Is there anything that you want to add to any of that?
I also, I don't, let me just make one comment here. There was a question by a neighbor, and not only by that, by John Ludlow, that is there understanding that a guarantee that there couldn't be circumstances in demolition and tearing into the bank of the house to create potential future erosion?
I don't know how that falls. Cindy, you might come into it, but I don't know how that falls under our jurisdiction, I guess.
Yes, it really doesn't fall under your jurisdiction, but I think that the applicant is aware of that concern and will probably behoove him to obtain appropriate liability insurance.
Which,
I agree, because it's not part of our setback regulations for height, distance, or anything else. But I just wanted to make that statement when we're talking here about a motion.
Cindy, can you just, we have a motion, and
Yeah.
before I ask for a second, is it possible for you to give us, have you written down what you understand the motion is presented at this time?
I understand the motion to be a height variance of 2 foot 6 inches.
Keep going.
To the peak,
So-
or to the highest point. Above the average grade.
Okay, and I guess we were all saying that really, we think that also, we have it on, of course, recording of this, but that it would read that it is based on the average grade, right?
Right.
Okay, that would be part of the motion as the words go.
Yes.
Okay, anything else, guys? I think that really covers it fairly simply. If there is nothing else, I'll ask for a second. And
Bob,
Hey,
in,
Bob?
in the
Yeah.
motion, should we state that we're approving this because it meets the 4 criteria for a dimensional variance?
Yes. Yes.
okay. Oh, I see. Okay, that would be
Yeah,
it.
you do have to add that in there.
John Ludlow, you had a
Yeah, is there any reason to put in the motion what we have determined to be the average grade? Is that necessary or not really?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
did, it is recorded and I will be able to use the discussion about the 4 standards as part of the findings of fact, and I'll distill those down and put them in the findings of fact.
Okay.
and possibly, I mean, I know it's part of it, but as let's just say referenced as presented on the drawings that were presented to the Zoning Board of Appeals, at the time.
Absolutely.
Okay, anybody want to do a second?
I'll second it.
Jim Bob seconds it. So I think, Cindy, we can do a call for vote on this.
Very good. Bont,
Yes.
Hauk,
Yes.
Kubashak,
Actually, I'd be last.
last. Ludlow,
Yes.
Surface,
Yes?
Kubashak.
Yes.
Monica has them in alphabetical order. I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
catch it.
that's all right. In this case, Ed, we have voted and that the variance has been found to meet, give you a 2'6" variance based on the submitted drawings and plans that have been put in front of us. So congratulations on all your hard work.
Yeah, I'll say thank you, and I agree with that. It was a lot of hard work. It still will be.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
The real work's going to come.
I think the excavator's going to have a heck of a time. And the foundation guy. So, okay, well, so to this point in time, we can move along on our agenda at the board here.
Mr. Chairman, I think I saw that Mr. Kemp had his hand raised to be recognized. I don't know if this is the proper time or not, but I wanted to let you know I saw it.
Okay, we do have open for public comments. Let's do that at our public, if that's okay. So at this point in time, our application and our public hearing has been closed. And we'll move on to any unfinished business, item number 5 on our agenda, which there was nothing. And then item number 6 was also communications, which we didn't have nothing listed. And item 7 does move us to any public comments where the user can raise hand and link in if there is anyone that would like to do so at this time.
Yeah, this is Gary Kemp again. I guess I was a little bit confused by exactly the responsibilities of the ZBA in terms of these other issues that I raised. And I don't know, how do I ensure that there is insurance that I'm appropriately covered there? And that's one big question, I guess, because I am fearful of the excavation and all that's going to be going on there.
I gotta tell you, I have no experience in trying to advise you on that, Gary. Maybe Ed, in your experience, as an architect, I'm not, maybe this isn't something you have to talk on if you don't want to, but you may have some past history of something like that, but I don't know that, the board has anything that we know of that we could offer on that.
Yeah, I can just give an overview for construction. Now, I know this one is a tricky construction site, but during the course of construction, we are required, just like I'm required to have liability insurance. Builders are also required to have liability insurance, and I can bring up with the owner, because this is a tricky site, for what do we do to make sure, and I say this in painting it in a bad light, if something bad were to happen, right? What are the steps for proper insurance, or what do we do for site construction that we call out a plan to make sure that we don't have any issues? So this is one of those things, it's an easier job if you say no to, because then you don't have to deal with it. So anybody that's going to work on this site is going to be overly cautious from the start, just because it is a tricky lot. I know that doesn't give a full answer, but we do have insurances as a builder, and just due to the nature of the lot, everybody's going to be twice the amount of caution just to make sure everything goes well.
That's what I understand also. And my son-in-law is in the insurance business, and he just said, you really should do everything you can to ensure the builders have, builders and risk insurance, and that you're put on there as a additional insured, because otherwise the only way there's anything gets resolved is in court, and I don't want to go in court any more than I already have. So I would appreciate it, and if you would pass that on to Steve and Rob. So
Yep, I can do that.
Ed, is Gen 1 a design build or just architectural or build?
Just architectural. I don't like to get my hands dirty anymore.
Okay, all right. Just asking. Okay. Well, anyone else at public comments at this time? All right, then item number 8 is any board member ZBA comments that we may have. I guess, did we approve an agenda? I guess we did that also, Cindy, correct? We got that approved?
Yes, we did.
Got that, okay.
I had made a motion on that, Bob.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean the agenda. I meant our meeting dates, that type of a thing. So for the year, our annual meeting dates. Sometimes we have to approve that.
We did that in December.
Okay, that's right. Okay, thanks. If there's nothing else, if anybody has anything, I'll give you your last chance. Otherwise, we'll adjourn and click off.
Adjournment has to be by roll call once again because of the Zoom platform.
Wow, I'm not used to that. Any other comments? All right, then I guess we go to roll call to adjourn, Cindy.
We have a motion?
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll
I'll
second
second it.
Okay, all right. All right, Cindy, you can do the call.
Bunt,
Yes.
Bauk,
Yes.
Zerkas,
Yes, yes.
Ludlow,
Yes.
Kubashak.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. This has been a nice experience, and it worked fairly well. So appreciate all the work, Cindy, and everybody logging in.
We couldn't have
Thank you.
done it without Kirk.
Who does? I do?
We couldn't have done this without Kirk, so thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Kirk. Yes, absolutely. So,
My pleasure.
all right.